The occult book of Enoch reveals that angels are supposed to be genderless spirits. The book of Enoch states they're supposed to be genderless spirits. At least in the Christian Orthodox tradition, they are depicted in a young male form, just like the demons. And reading the following, probably all religions are from older sources, and they made it each with their own beliefs, that it did not make them baptized symbolic, and enter another heretical without taboos and narrow-minded, the work Fall of the Rebel Angels by Peter Paul Rubens, 1618 to 1620, oil on canvas. Now the book of Enoch, the prophet Enoch is credited with writing a text which contains prophecies about the coming of the Messiah, the end of the world. It talks about the fall of angels and the fallen angels, and gives detailed descriptions of hell and heaven, the movements of the planets and of weather phenomena, and much more. This book, the teachings of which are believed to have been transmitted through oral tradition, is not included in the books of the Old Testament and is considered an apocryphal text, although it may have greatly influenced not only the Pentateuch of the Hebrews, that's the first 5 books of the Old Testament, but even the Bible itself, Revelation of the Apostle John, and the letter of the Apostles. The early church fathers were strongly influenced by it and praised it, such as Saint Irenaeus, Saint Justin, martyr, Saint Clement of Alexandria, Saint Athenagoras, the Apostle Paul, and the Jewish historian Josephus. Nevertheless, none of them agreed with the account of the fall of the angels, as we shall see below. The fact is, however, that it is not considered a heretical book, even if it is not included in the Old Testament. According to scholars, it is most likely that it was written in the Hebrew language during the years of the Babylonian captivity, and this is because many descriptions of it, like the Ancient of Days, resemble corresponding descriptions of the prophet Daniel. It's certain that it underwent variations during its copying, and while it was well known in early Christian times, its traces disappeared around the end of the 8th to the beginning of the 9th century AD. The English travelers Bruce and Ruppel found a copy of it in Abyssinia, written in the Coptic language, and in 1811 it was translated into English by Bishop Lawrence and then into other languages. The former, together with their leader, fell forever from the hierarchy of light and turned into the dark demons, who have since been plotting the divine work against the divine work. And on this point of view, many traditions have been created by the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox churches. The Book of Enoch, however, takes a different view. Let's see what that view is. Quote, "And it came to pass, when the sons of man multiplied in those days, beautiful and good daughters were born to them, and the angels, sons of heaven, saw them and said to one another, Let us choose ourselves women from among men, and let us bear children ourselves. And Simiazas, the chief among them, said to them, I am afraid you will not want to do this thing, and I myself will be the debtor of a great sin. Everyone responded to this, Let us all swear the same oath, and curse each other not to turn away from this until we fulfill it and do this thing. Then they all shouldered together and accused each other of this. And then they themselves received a wife. Each of them chose a wife for themselves, and they came into them and dwelt among them, and they taught them pharmacology, and rhizotomy, and they taught them herbs, and in their stomachs they became great giants, 3,000 thick, who endured the labors of men. And when these people were unable to help them, the giants rushed upon them and hunted the people, and came to sin among the roosters, beasts, reptiles, the birds, fish, and devoured each other's flesh and drank the blood. Then the earth prospered against the lawless." End quote. The narrative goes on to detail the arts the angels taught the women, and the evil the giants sowed on earth. until the four strongest angels, Michael, that's archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel, cast their gaze upon the earth and saw what had happened, so they informed God. God decreed that the fallen should be cast into the depths of the abyss forever, and the giants should perish by their own hands, and that the sinful race of men should perish in the flood. The fallen ones begged Enoch to intercede for them with God, but he answered them that angels intercede for men and not the other way around. Continuing, the text message mentions the extremely interesting that the giants will give birth to wicked spirits that will be called spirits of evil. They will not eat, they will not drink, they will be invisible and responsible for every calamity of the people. There have been various attempts to interpret the above narration, which is also the most heretical point of the book. First of all, it should be pointed out that such a text can be allegorical and is really interpretation is based on keys, quote unquote, symbols, without the knowledge of which it's not possible to interpret. I will rely on what is described verbatim. It's claimed by some that the translation of the word Elohim is wrong, because it is not only translated as angels, as in Enoch, but also as sons of God or virtuous men. Therefore, the sons of God, hence the virtuous people, procreated with inferior women committing sin, and not the angels of God. The truth is that the Hebrew word Elohim is a plural number. It means gods or powers, and the phrase B'nai Elohim means sons of the gods. It's also mentioned in Genesis in the disputed phrase, and seeing his sons, God, the daughters of men, Genesis 6:2. The explanation of this point in the translation I have, Brother Vasiliadis, the theologian, says, asserts that the sons of God are the descendants of Seth's pious generation from Enos, and the daughters of men are the descendants of his generation, Cain, which is characterized as corrupt. But in the text of Enoch, it is mentioned, there were 200 who went down in the years of Jared to the top of Mount Hermon. So if they were humans, from what higher point did they apparently descend the mountain? To get down somewhere, one has to be higher, and what is higher than a mountain? Thus, this together with the interpretation based on the sons of God as the descendants of Seth strongly reminds us of the apocryphal pseudo-inscription book of Adam and Eve, where it stated that the proto-created were expelled from paradise, lived on the top of a towering mountain, and then, after the murder of Abel, the descendants of Cain lived at the foot of the mountain. And the pious of the top were forbidden to descend and mingle with their distant relatives at the base of the mountain. But even if we accept this as an explanation, the text mentions descendants on Aradis, so we do not accept that the pious of the summit descended to the decadence and corruption of the base, to those of the base of the mountain, but some higher up the mountain. The interpretation of the word as men, however, does not account for the products of this union, namely the giants or Nephilim, as referred to in the text. If they were humans, why did they reproduce? The reproduction lead to the birth of giants, who are also mentioned in Genesis. And the giants were on the earth in those days, and with that, as if the sons of God entered into the daughters of men and gave birth themselves, they were the giants of old, the famous people of renown, Genesis 6:4. While in Numbers 33:13, it mentions that they were the sons of Anak, and hints that in the end the flood did not destroy them all, but some at least survived in the area of Palestine. Another argument of those who accept the version of the wrong translation is based on Genesis, where God says, "My spirit shall not remain in these people forever, because they are flesh," Genesis 6:3. If we examine the text, however, we find that the word men may refer to the giants and not to their progenitors, the fallen angels or the Grigors, the watchers. The meaning does not change if we consider this, and it agrees with the book of Enoch that, quote, born under spirits and flesh, in the earth their dwelling is, end quote. Therefore, I consider that even this argument expressed by St. Augustine does not exclude the correctness of Enoch's texts. However, the most central argument of the critics of the book is that, according to them, the angels are not possible as spirits to procreate. We will stand here longer. In the Gospel according to Matthew, Jesus Christ mentions that since he is resurrected, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but you are like God's angels in heaven. That is, the resurrected after being human beings. Based on this, critics of the book claim that Christ himself has given a definitive answer to these theories. Again, however, the God-man, that is Jesus Christ, could mean not the angels as a whole, but those who chose not to be enraged, the righteous people who answered the call of the Archangel Michael and remained in heaven. It does not make clear, in any case, whether angels have the ability to create life or not. Angels are supposed to be genderless spirits, at least in the Christian Orthodox tradition, who are necessarily depicted as young males, without beards that is, in iconography. However, the latter have been accused of atrocities against living men and women in the form of incubi and succubi. I don't know if a case of procreation has been reported, but there are many cases of sexual contact. The Inquisition accused witches of immoral acts with demons. Saints of the church reported that they had suffered from them. Procreation by gods and goddesses is a common tradition throughout the world, and the virgin conception of Christ and others was done with the mediation of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and it is assumed that the Antichrist of the Christian tradition will be the product of such an unlawful conception, something which usually escapes the notice of all who have dealt with the subject we are discussing, as the attitude of the daughters of men. Why did they accept without fear, to say the least, contact with spiritual entities that were obviously quite different from themselves? In all nature, the female must feel an attraction to the male, who may be handsome or ugly, however similar to the members of his species, if one excludes at least the perversions. Well, let me put my comment in here. Remember what the Apostle St. Paul told us, that be careful what people say to you, even if they're like angels of light. Don't accept them just because of their beautiful appearance, because the devil appeared to Eve as an angel of light and enticed her and seduced her that way to listen to his ungodly words. Now we know that, of course, spirits can become shapeshifters. Okay, they can take on any shape or image that they want. Now going back to this, so could the watchers have deceived the women, appearing in human form? Of course they could. The entire Old Testament, as well as the book of Enoch, states that angels can assume human form when they want to, therefore logically they should appear before them as humans. And I will direct you to the book of Tobit of the Old Testament, where the archangel Raphael appeared to Tobias in human form. It's only 4 pages, you should read it, it's very, very good. Now, whether they declared their identity, we don't know, but perhaps they did, they did not. Raphael did not declare his identity until the end. Whether they declared their identity, we don't know, but perhaps they did. Otherwise, God would have no reason to be angry with the women, since they fell victim to fraud. But the God of the Old Testament has so many human flaws that no one can be sure how he would react. Christian conception seems to place the fall of angels in pre-human times, before the creation of Adam. Genesis states that Ophist, the serpent's deception of Eve, occurred in paradise, so the fall must have occurred earlier. But Enoch tells us that it was in the years of Jared that the Gregors or the Watchers came down to Mount Hermon. that is, in times when men were already living on earth, expelled from paradise for many generations, at least 6 in number, and if indeed the apple symbolizes a knowledge which a spirit was never to relieve to man, then one might suppose that the writer of Genesis had in view the account of Enoch, though he or some other took care to censor and cover it behind a symbolism. The birth of Noah. Lamech, grandson of Noah, married, and when his wife gave birth to a child, terror seized his soul. The child's flesh was white as snow and pink as a rose, and his hair was also white. As soon as he opened his eyes, the room was lit up, and as soon as he opened his mouth, he began to praise God. Lamech feared that the child was not his but an angel's, sent his father Methuselah to Enoch, who already dwelt with the angels, to consult him. Enoch assured him that he was his own child, told him of the fall of the whirling angels, and prophesied that Noah would survive the flood, which would destroy men and products of one-way unions with the fallen ones. Comments at first, the image of Noah looks like albinism, a disease in which no melanin is produced in the body. No albino, however, can speak from the moment of birth. In Lamech's question, it seems that the belief in the reproduction abilities of angels was common and could not have been influenced by Enoch, since the latter had just then revealed to Methuselah the fall of the watchers and the coming deluge. Could Noah's description be a symbolic reference to the creation of the white race? Unfortunately, there is no confirmed evidence for such great antiquity of the Jews, nor are there any references to the appearance of the sons of Noah. Here, as in the story of the flood, the possibility of the influence of the copyists or even the authors from their earlier sources appears more strongly than ever. Enoch was already living with the angels in a place far away, but accessible from Methuselah. Where this place might have been, no one knows. However, after that Enoch was taken up into the heavens, are the opinions of all those who claim that they were not angels but intelligent beings from other planets, who mingled with mortals descending from their flying vehicles, and because of the differences in genetic material gave birth to giants? I leave that up to you, the writer says. Epilogue. The book of Enoch was presented quite abbreviated and with more weight on the fall of the angels and less on the birth of Noah. Of course, the text does not only include these events, but also descriptions of the spheres of existence, interpretations of celestial phenomena, the names of the lords of the heavenly bodies or angels of powers, as they are typically mentioned. These passages contain many difficult points and are good ground for study. The exclusion of the book from the series of the Old Testament is understandable, since what is described is opposed to the traditions of the Church embraced in her attempt to introduce the new doctrine, free from old conceptions of similar doctrines. To what extent the Church has achieved this is a matter beyond the scope of the article here. The God of Enoch is the typical God of the entire Old Testament. He is harsh, punishing, unconvincing, majestic in the face of his omnipotence, unyielding in the face of the forgiveness of the fallen, with suspicion of human emotions and mainly anger. The demons who torment people are not the vigilantes in Enoch. They are rather described as sad figures, in contrast to the Christian tradition, which considers them to be responsible for all evil. In Enoch, the spirits of the giants are the ones who cause the sufferings, trapped in the lower material dimension from which they were born. The concept of acquiring knowledge is also ambiguous. On the one hand, it's considered sinful, transmitted by the fallen watchers, fallen angels, and on the other hand, Enoch offers plenty of it. That is to say, while he grants some astronomical and astrological knowledge, he reproaches Archiviel, Tamiel, and Sarabiel for teaching the same things to the daughters of men. The similarities with the story of the Titans, and especially with Prometheus, are obvious. And one wonders if all this technological civilization that we have developed, which can destroy us as well as save, started from a corruption or if it was a gift from God. What God we accept as a perfect being would have flaws so vindictive, so human that he would deprive his beloved creatures of the knowledge to improve their lives. Therefore, the book of Enoch, regardless of the correctness or otherwise of its narratives, like that of the Old Testament, they are offered for fruitful reflection on religious, theological, and not only issues. The author says, in my honest opinion, this is that the angels were probably not angels exactly. The ancient Greeks also say the same thing, that the gods went with women, and other religions say the same thing. Maybe all these are like those groups. They are all based on books they wrote with their own beliefs and cooked up the original facts. And the bibliography is from Genesis, Brotherhood of Theologians, the Savior, Book of Enoch by Katsaras Spanos Publications, New Testament Translation, Divine Contacts, Zechariah Sitchin, Esopron Publications, the bibliography of the Devil, Peter Stanford, Archetype Publications. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.